Welcome, honored guests. If you're listening, you have landed on a Toastmaster-inspired podcast. I'm your host, Bernie Martin, and I hope to have some interesting conversations with some interesting people. Join us as we deep dive into some of the topics that people are passionate about. I'm so glad you chose to visit with us on Passionate Pursuits. Welcome again to another episode of Passionate Pursuits, and I'm very excited about my guest today, Christy Green Corum. We have been around the Shaw circles for several years. Early on, had seen her from a distance, knew kind of who she was, but within the last few years had an occasion to get to know her a little bit more intimately, as she was my boss under the customer experience title. And I'm not too shy to say that she would be top of the list as far as favorite supervisors, because she was very involved, very intentional. She allowed our team to have a platform, have a voice, and she encouraged us to be more of ourselves and tap into some of those things that were in us, but we didn't really know how to draw out. So thank you, Christy, for being intentional and drawing those things out of our team. You've made me a better person for my time under your leadership. Welcome to this episode, and tell me a little bit about yourself. Say hello to the thousands of listeners that I have. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It is a privilege to be here talking to you today, and I have had the privilege of knowing you, Bernie, and working alongside you, growing a friendship beyond the work relationship. It's just been a blessing. So a little bit about me. I'm currently sitting in a new space, less than a year, working in a new role. I am no longer leading, managing people. So I don't have humans reporting to me today, but I do have quite a few people on the residential side of Shaw's business who are expecting me to lead them through system transformation. So I still have quite a bit of responsibility, just in a different facet today than I did when you and I worked together. I am outside of work, which is my favorite place to be. I am a mother of 3. I am the middle child, and yes, that does say a lot about my true personality. And I am a wife and a dog mom and a lover of all things outdoors.
Yeah, I've seen some of your adventures, and that's amazing. I heard some of your stories. There's something to be said for living life. What we are going to attempt to bring to the table today, we both have a passion for relationships. We have a passion for honesty, intimacy, getting past the superficial. And I wanted to get some thoughts from you on what makes a good, strong relationship. What supports intimacy in a relationship, and what your thoughts would be on that.
Well, it's really funny because as you were giving an introduction and you were welcoming everybody to this podcast, I wrote down a few words that you mentioned, and being involved, being intentional, and allowing other people to show up. I think that honestly, that's something that I carry through in all of my relationships, whether it be at work, it be outside of work. And those are the things that I expect from other people in true, honest relationships. It doesn't always happen that way. I mean, you and I both know that, right? We don't get from others oftentimes what we give to them. And
Right.
Sometimes we might get our feelings hurt because we have certain expectations that we've created for other people that they just can't live up to. But I do think that the being involved and being intentional with every relationship, that my best friendships are those friendships where people reach out to me without me having to reach out to them. Like, I don't have to be the one to initiate the conversations. I don't have to be the person who sends the text and says, hey, I'm checking in on you, like Bertie is so good at doing. But when they do those things, it lets me know that I'm not an afterthought. And I am on somebody's mind, and that helps me feel like there's a bigger bond. There's a bond that's created there that they want to keep connected to. But I think that the other part is there's an intimacy in relationships that I crave now at nearly 43 years old that maybe I didn't really know existed when I was younger. I've always appreciated and valued relationships, and I've loved having friends, but my circle was always small. And that was intentional. Let's just be real. I mean, it's easy to trust a smaller group of friends, but it's also easier to manage and maintain relationships when it's a smaller group. But I think now that I've gotten older, I need different things from people, and I need different things from not just my friends, but I need different things from my husband. Mm-hmm. I need different things from my own parents. And that level of intimacy is much deeper with all of those people than it's ever been. And maybe it's because they ask more of me, or our roles have changed. You know, we're not the same people that we were 20 years ago, mm-hmm. thankfully. But that intimacy level is very different. And the word intimacy scares a lot of people.
Yeah. Have you heard the breakdown definition that intimacy is into me see?
No.
That's one of my favorites, because it shows that intentionality of going past what's on the surface and really seeing what that person holds inside the deepest parts of their heart, the deepest parts of who they are as an individual.
I love that. I love it. I'm writing that down, Bernie. That's another thing that you've taught me. So see, constantly evolving. You're always helping me grow.
Well, and the different levels of friendships too, because we talk about that inner circle, and then there's that next level, which is more acquaintances, and then you have the outer circle, which is just the general public, the people who may see you, know who you are, but they don't know anything about you. And so being able to protect that inner circle is crucial to our relationships, our confidence level, and being able to share with these people that deeper part of ourselves and the trust that's involved. I'll have to share a podcast I did with my best friend, because we talked about a lot of those things. What we were going over is what makes our friendship work, especially with it being a long distance relationship. And there were several points in there that are so important for people to know just about relationships. So if you think about your inner circle, is it still a small group? You're talking about expanding. Are you working on that intentionally, expanding that inner circle of people that you trust?
Well, I'll tell you that God works in mysterious ways. And many, many, many times over the last several years, I've not known that I was looking for a friend, but he sends me a new friend. And it's been really cool too. Again, I'm in my 40s. I know that I'm not a young chicken, but I know that I'm not like over the hill. I'm not yet ready at the retirement age just yet, but still it's good to know that at 40 something that you can still make new friends, because I didn't know that that was possible. And I definitely didn't know that it was possible to develop deep relationships with new folks at this stage of my life. But when I was going through certain things, again, without asking specifically, send somebody to help me through it, he sent somebody to me to help me through things. Mm-hmm. So I didn't necessarily intend to expand my circle, but my circle became expanded for me, knowing that I needed new people in my tribe. Mm-hmm. My friendship circle that I've carried with me over the years, though, it's the same friends.
Yes.
I mean, I have 3 or 4 friends who I've carried along with me from middle school. Mm-hmm. I have 2 friends that I've carried with me since elementary school, like literally kindergarten. And though we might not see each other all the time, the things that we've gone through, we've been there, even if just through conversation with each other, and allowed each other to be present, to show up, to speak whatever they need to speak about without, well, I would say without bias, but sometimes we do give our honest, most times we do give our honest opinions, but they still know that they have a safe place, and I know that I have a safe place to go to in them whenever we need each other. So I have that group of friends who's been there with me all these years, and then I have these new friends who I hope to carry with me through the next years of my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the awesome things about the Ride or Dies, though, is even if time passes, when you do get together, it's like nothing has changed. And
Yeah.
you just pick right up where you left off. So I'm not going to ask you for details unless you want to share. Okay. But how do you handle disappointments in relationships when they don't turn out to be what you had hoped or what you thought they might turn into? How do you handle that disappointment?
I therapy myself a lot. And therapy outside of myself would be great one day, but I haven't done that quite yet. But I've always thought that I'm pretty good at rationalizing what's really happening with another person, or if it was my own expectations. And sometimes I've allowed myself to be okay with being what some people might call the doormat. And I'll sit down and I'll just let the other person's issues or feelings or actions or whatever, I'll let that just continue and just go. I'll play my part. I'll say what I need to say, but I'll allow things to settle before I seek out some kind of resolution. Mm-hmm. But I do have a lot of internal conversation with myself around, was this them? Was it really me? And I always want to make sure that in the end, whatever the conflict could be or the lack of meeting of expectations, I have to have an answer. One way or another, I have to have resolve. And I'm not afraid to ask people tough questions. Mm-hmm. And that's a blessing and a curse, because sometimes when you ask the tough questions, you get tough answers. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's both toughened me up, but also made me more vulnerable too, in the same respect, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I don't mind asking the hard questions, and it might break my heart, or it might make me better and help me move on from a situation, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But that's something that I've tried teaching the kids too. It's, you have to ask the question, because if you are sitting on it, you're losing sleep over it. If you're wrestling with something, like, just ask the questions.
Yes, and I will say, from a trauma perspective, a lot of times the things that swirl around in my head are unfounded. And if you don't address the issues, if you're not willing to ask that question, then you just continue being tortured mentally by these thoughts that have no business even being in your head to begin with.
I agree.
So learning how to communicate those things and trusting that the other person is going to understand where you're coming from. Look, I have to clear this up. I have to know, is this what you meant, or did you say this? And a lot of times the answer is, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, and you said that I don't have to go into detail, but I will share with you a portion of a text message that was shared between me and another human yesterday. And it's exactly that. So, perfect timing. My words were that I don't mind doing what I need to do to protect my own peace, but that silence only allows for intrusive thoughts and assumptions. And until we sit down and have a discussion and put action and intention around fixing things, instead, we might want to consider discussing how to walk away from the situation. So I hope, and I never know that. So the part in this that always gets uncomfortable is not knowing how it's going to be received. Mm-hmm. Like, I can say things the right way, right? We can say all of the right things and we can feel better about what we say. But then if you don't get the response back that you're hoping for, or if you don't get any response back at all, that feels really gross too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's hard to communicate sometimes over text, because you don't have the inflection, you don't have the facial. Yes.
So, like, see my face and hear my words at the same time.
That requires even more clarification. It's like, now wait a minute. Oh man, this has really been great. But because you were so influential in our group, I also want to touch on, and I know that intimacy and relationships cannot be left out of the workplace. There has to be an ability, like we used to say, bring your whole self to work. Be who you are. So you were good at making that space for us. Tell us just a little bit about your perspective about leadership, even though you may not be in an official leadership role. We do still lead people wherever we are. So how does that relationship, the value of relationships, play into leadership in the workplace?
So the team that I'm working with right now, we're all a new team, so we're under a year old as a team. There's 3 associates on this team, and all of us have just literally been in this role a year or less. And I have the most tenure at Shaw from these other individuals. But one of the things that they've called out is my relationships. I do know a lot of people. I know a lot of names. I know a lot of people who do a lot of stuff,
you do.
right? But that goes back to me not being afraid to ask the tough questions. I've asked a lot of tough questions to a lot of people in very influential positions. I won't say I don't care, but a title, a role, a position, a seat at a table, it doesn't matter to me how big up the chain a person sits. I'm still going to talk to them. I'm still going to approach them. I'm still going to ask them a question if I have a question, just like I'm going to speak to the janitor when she comes through and she puts out new paper towels in the break room. So these new folks who are on the team, as they're trying to get acquainted with business practices, they can get acquainted with systems easily. You can go online and you can Google how to figure out how to work some of the technology that we're using, but navigating who's who in an organization this large is a little bit different. So I've always joked in the past that my role, no matter what seat I've sat in, no matter what position I've had at the company, I feel like a switchboard operator. And I know you've heard me say this before, but I'm constantly sitting back there as the old school switchboard operator, and I'm just pulling plugs, and I'm trying to connect people wherever they need to be connected so they can get what they need. Mm-hmm. And it don't matter what title I have, I'm still doing it today. That's what I'm doing with these other associates. I'm building relationships with them and getting them to trust me through setting up the meetings with the people who have the knowledge that we need, introducing them to the people inside the company, getting them familiar with business, so that they can grow and they can help me, because they might have more system knowledge than I have. I just happen to have the people knowledge. Right. And it works. And I do think that that's part of leadership, and I can guide them. I can help them in that way as they're helping guide me with the other pieces that help me do my job.
But the ability to do that also speaks into your ability to see beyond the superficial, because you're recognizing what the need actually is, and you're willing to go there and help wherever you see that need. So, Christy, do you have any other final thoughts that you want to share with us?
I feel like I've already given you so much. I don't even know what all I've said, but I'll probably be reminded of it soon. But this has been so much fun. I could talk to you forever. I think that you know that. But
yeah, it goes both ways. So thank you for being willing to be a guest on this.
Yeah.
What may become a more permanent event, but for now, it's been a great pleasure, and I hope you have a great day.
Same. Thanks so much, Bernie.
You're welcome.